Hey everybody, welcome back to the Stories to Tell podcast. I'm still Jonathan, that's still Logan, and we are so excited to once again join you this evening to tell some weird, wacky, wild, and wonderful stories from all throughout history. That's what we do here. We tell each other stories, we react to them. It is really fun. Um, and we have some really crazy stuff to get into today.
Yeah, and for those of you who may be new, for those of you who are returning, you're probably super tired of hearing us explain this. But he has a topic, and I have no clue what it is. And I have a topic, and he has no clue what it is. So these reactions you're seeing are 100% pure, genuine reactions. So without further ado, let's get into it. Jonathan, tell me a story.
Oh boy, have I got a story for you tonight. And we are going to start um, in the year 1899. And
That's the same year as Newsies.
is that really when Newsies takes
Yeah, the
place?
the Newsboy strike of 1899. Well,
I was not aware of that. Okay. Well, while the famous Newsboys strike was taking place, ironically, we're also going to be in New York, um, but up the Hudson River in Albany.
okay.
So we meet Theodore Roosevelt, who at the time
Ooh.
was the governor of New York. Now, at this point, Theodore Roosevelt was already a massively popular kind of national hero. He had already had the famous charge um, up San Juan Hill during the Spanish-American War as commander of the Rough Riders. He was a very famous figure, and he was now the governor of New York. Now, as governor of New York, Theodore Roosevelt was very uh, progressive, but not in the sense of like progressive like we talk about today, like Bernie Sanders progressive. He was progressive in the sense that New York politics at the time were incredibly corrupt, just seething with all kinds of machine
Mhm.
politics and patronage, and Teddy Roosevelt really wanted to clean all of that up. He hated that and wanted to make it go away. Well, obviously the powers that be in New York at the time were not too thrilled about that, right? The people who were, you know, maintaining power and large amounts of wealth through that corrupt political system did not want to see Teddy Roosevelt come in and just clean house. So like, okay, how do we get rid of this dude? And then fate handed them a helping hand. In November of 1899, the vice president of the United States, a man named Garrett Hobart, died.
Okay.
And left a vacancy in the vice presidency. And again, at this point, Teddy Roosevelt is quite popular. He's quite well known. And so William McKinley, who was the president of the United States at the time, was going to need a new running mate for the 1900 presidential election. And the Republican machine, kind of in New York, started, hinting pretty heavily, hey, you should really pick Roosevelt, because they wanted to get him out of New York, right? They wanted to get him out of being governor. He quit messing with their machine.
So let's just give him
So,
more power.
well, the vice presidency was, and to some extent still is, very much a figurehead position.
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't have a lot. The vice president has very little real power, and certainly doesn't have any power, in a given state. And so, the New York machine politicians were like, okay, we can kind of shift him over to the vice presidency, and he won't be able to mess with us anymore. Um, McKinley thought it was a great idea. Roosevelt thought it was a terrible idea. He had zero interest in being vice president. Um, but he ended up winning the vice presidential nomination unanimously, thanks to some maneuvering by the New York political machine. So he accepted, and he became the vice president. He was not vice president for very long. Okay, he was sworn in as vice president in March of 1901, and on September 6th, 1901. So it's been what, like 6 months? I think exactly 6 months since Roosevelt took office. By this point, Roosevelt is just bored out of his gourd. He cannot stand being vice president. He hates it. He doesn't get to do anything. He's not enjoying himself. So he's on vacation at Isle Lamont, Vermont, which is an island in the middle of Lake Superior, um, on the Vermont side.
Okay.
So he's just out in the middle of nowhere, right? But on September 6th, 1901, President William McKinley was at the Buffalo Exposition in Buffalo, New York, when a man walked up to him with a revolver concealed under a handkerchief in his hand and shot him.
Ah.
So he's in bad shape, right? And they send a messenger out to go find Roosevelt, who is out in the middle of nowhere, Vermont. You know, hey, the president's been shot. We need you. So he goes. So Roosevelt goes out to Buffalo, and by the time that he gets there, McKinley is actually doing better. He's improving. The doctors are being able to treat him. So Roosevelt's like, all right, peace out, and goes right back to Vermont, to the Adirondack Mountains. And he's just on vacation in the mountains while the president is like laying there with a bullet in him. The vice president is on a camping trip.
Like, he's fine. He'll survive. He's in one piece,
Literally.
right?
I mean, how unbelievable is that? Can you imagine today, in this day and age?
He's only bleeding profusely.
The president's just been shot. The vice president shows up and is like, oh, you'll probably be all right. And then just disappears again.
Man.
Goes off in the mountains to keep pretending he's not the vice president because he really hates it. Well, McKinley takes a turn for the worse.
Mm-hmm.
And Roosevelt is still in the Adirondack Mountains. So they had to send a runner up to Mount Marcy, Vermont, to go find him again.
That just sounds like torture.
I know, like he's not making great jobs easy. He must have just been. I can only imagine that as vice president, Teddy Roosevelt was probably pretty infuriating to work with, But the runner finally goes and finds him and lets him know that that President McKinley is at death's door, and he dies on September 14th at 2:15 in the morning. Roosevelt is not even there. They had set up this like stagecoach relay because they're like, we have to get him to Buffalo as quickly as possible. So they like set up this relay of stagecoaches, and they take him across, to Buffalo. Oh gosh, I killed his eye. And there he was sworn in as the president of the United States. Again, the national security implications of that are just completely insane in today's context. Like back then, there was, the risk of the president, disappearing for a week was much lower. Like, I mean, can you imagine if that happened today?
Like, just all of a sudden, Biden's just like, I'm going to take a week off and just disappear.
Completely off the grid. No security with him. No, nobody with him. He's just up in the Adirondack. I think he actually was with his wife, but they're up camping in the Adirondacks.
Well, but at the same time, I mean, if the Secret Service can't find him, let's be realistic. Nobody can find him.
Well, at the time, the Secret Service really was not in charge of presidential security. In fact, William McKinley's assassination was the kind of catalyst for the Secret Service getting involved. The Secret Service started out just combating counterfeiters. That was the whole idea. But after William McKinley was shot, the Secret Service kind of shifted over to that role of protecting the president. The craziest thing about this whole thing is that he didn't really learn his lesson. In fact, he, as the president of the United States, kept pretty well, doing stuff like that.
Oh, no.
Teddy Roosevelt absolutely loved the outdoors. He loved nature. he really enjoyed kind of being out in, you know, in the world, in nature. He loved
Yeah.
Yellowstone. He loved there's an area of South Dakota that he frequently traveled to that has actually been preserved as Theodore Roosevelt National Park now.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to go hunting out there. Um, and so after he became president, he would just go, you know, traveling in the wilderness. He'd be gone for a month. He spent a month in Yellowstone camping and hunting. Can you imagine the president just goes off the grid for a month
Can
to go on a
you
hunting trip?
can you imagine being one of the president's aides going into the Oval Office is like, sir, we need. Oh no,
He did it again.
not again.
He escaped.
It's like some foreign dignitary comes to visit. Okay, and now we're going to give you the opportunity to be introduced to the president. Wait, one moment. What do you mean he's gone? Do you know where he went?
Right. Exactly.
Wait, he's been gone for how
So,
long?
speaking of foreign dignitaries,
Uh oh.
um, Theodore Roosevelt was also an avid martial artist, and Yoshitsugu Yamashita was a Japanese jujitsu master who came to the United States to visit. And Theodore Roosevelt said, "Hey, you want to give me private jujitsu lessons?" So the president of the United States learned jujitsu. Something tells me that if somebody had tried to assassinate Theodore Roosevelt, they would have had their work cut out for them because he was a tough customer.
Like, nah, you shouldn't be scared of the Secret Service. You should be scared of me.
Be scared of the president. Yeah, he's a bad man.
But at the same
I love
time,
Theodore Roosevelt and stuff like that.
but at the same time, man, would that be one heck of a story to tell at the jail cells? Like, oh, what are you in here for? Well, I tried to assassinate the president. Secret Service? No, the president. Wait,
He beat the snot
what?
out of me. Yeah. In fact, actually, Theodore Roosevelt survived an assassination attempt in 1912 while he was running for a third term. Um, he didn't win, but during the course of the campaign, he was giving a speech, and a guy walked up to him, or he was about to give a speech, and a guy walked up to him and shot him. But he had the speech folded up in his pocket, and it was so thick that it stopped the bullet. It didn't stop the bullet, but it like slowed the bullet way down. So it injured him, but not like
It wasn't lethal.
lethally.
It was like
So,
being shot with a BB gun by the time it hit him.
right. So well, it was more severe than that because he's bleeding.
Yeah.
But he literally this is Theodore Roosevelt. Right? He has to tackle the dude. Right, the crowd like tackles him, and Roosevelt gets up in front of them and throws his coat open and shows him the bullet hole in his coat and in his shirt, and then he gives the freaking speech. I love Theodore Roosevelt. This dude is total Chad.
It's like
Just an absolute animal.
it's just like, son, you're not even worth worrying about.
Yeah. So I do want to, before I kind of close my portion here, I want to go over one other very interesting thing from the McKinley assassination. So we've covered Theodore Roosevelt's point of view, right? Or his lack of point of view because he was in the mountains the entire time.
Like, oh, you're alive. See ya.
You're good. Yeah, you're got a bullet in his stomach, but he's probably fine. Go back to my
Just
camp picture. I mean, I still just cannot believe.
just walk it off.
Yeah, Roosevelt did walk it off. I mean, that's his thing, you know. But so William McKinley, just before he went to the Buffalo exhibition where he was shot, he was approached by a man named Father Zeglin, and Father Zeglin was a priest and lived in Chicago. And he was also a bit of an inventor, and specialized in kind of working with silk.
Hmm.
Um, so in 1893, the mayor of Chicago was assassinated. He was shot and killed. And Father Zeglin was really troubled by that. He was very upset. And he kind of had the thought, hey, I know something about silk. I wonder if there's a way to make like a silk vest that is woven kind of, thick enough and strong enough
Is this
that it could protect somebody from a bullet.
the beginnings of Kevlar?
Not Kevlar, but the bulletproof vest. Yes, he used silk, and he
Okay.
and he figured out how to weave silk and other materials together to make a bulletproof vest. And he was actually successful. He would test it on himself. He would have an assistant. You get him in front of a crowd and have an assistant shoot him, and he was always okay. So
Do you trust me?
he's
Yes. Okay, shoot me. Wait. What?
right, yeah. So he perfects it by 1901. He's got it. He's got it down. He has a vest that will stop a bullet, and he approaches William McKinley's kind of office and says, "Hey, I have a bulletproof vest. I've tested it. It works. I'd like to offer it to the president. I'm worried about him, and I think it could protect him." And they told him, "Well, the president's very interested in your work and would love to meet with you and try out your vest. Presumably not a live fire test, I would imagine, given that it
Yeah.
was the president of the United States.
Probably
But
put it on a post and shoot at it or something like that.
exactly, try it out, see a demonstration. But he's got to go to the Buffalo exhibition, and he can meet with you when he gets back." And he went to the Buffalo exhibition
And
and he
got
got
shot.
and died.
Uh,
I mean,
that's
you were so close.
that's like that's like having someone walk up to you, like come back from the future, say, "Hey, don't do this." But instead of listening to them, you're like, "Wait, I'm just too busy. I need to go to that specific event right now."
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's just crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. So anyway, that's the weird and wild circumstances of the McKinley assassination, as told from the perspectives of both McKinley and then Vice President Theodore Roosevelt. Um, I'm very interested to hear what you have for me tonight. So let's get right into it. Without further ado, Logan,
Okay.
tell me a
Okay.
story.
Okay. So so to start off, I have a little song I came up with.
Oh
It might
boy,
sound very familiar, but it is mine.
we get branded jingles now.
I can't stop laughing. Oh my gosh. Hey. Row, row, row your boat. This is World War II. Sink the ship and get out quick, 'cause you're in a canoe.
Okay. I
This
that is not at all where I expected you. Like based on the title of the video, I did not. That's not what I expected to be hearing. So now I'm really interested.
this is the story of Operation Frankton of World War II. Now is this what I'm about to tell you has been made into a movie. So anyone having that idea, I'm sorry. It's already taken. And the movie is called Cockleshell Heroes. And so this is very interesting. So, it's December of 1942 in occupied France. So, this is after the German Blitzkrieg. This is when they have taken almost all the way into Spain. So, all of Belgium, all of France, except for that tiny little pocket by the border, is taken, including the port town of Bordeaux. I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, that's spot on. Yeah.
Bordeaux. The port town of Bordeaux. Oh no, I'm not French. I'm sorry. But so this is a very important harbor that they have there. Because what happens is not only do merchant ships harbor there to unload supplies for the German army, but they also have some warships there. And as if that wasn't enough, it's also a U-boat station.
Oh wow. So like with the bunkers where they would keep the okay.
Well, at least the U-boats would visit there to resupply,
Right. That makes sense.
come back after their scouting patterns. Yeah. And so and so Britain, they're sitting there, they're like, dang, this massive port is just across the channel. Like, they're like right on our doorstep. And so they're like, you know what? We need to destroy this place. Or like we need to make this harbor unusable somehow. And so they're looking at it and they're talking about like, well, their ships are better than our ships. You know? I mean, they've got the Bismarck, they've got the Tirpitz, they've
I
got
think maybe the Bismarck. What? How long had this been at this point?
I don't know, it was December of 1942.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know if the Bismarck was gone yet or not,
Anything
but
like that. But like they
they
have,
had some great ships. Yeah,
yeah, the Graf Zeppelin, the Prinz Eugen, all of
Grosh
these
Bay. Yeah,
all of these incredible ships, not to mention their destroyer fleet, not to mention their U-boats. I mean, the Kriegsmarine, it was a it was a very very effective and cutting edge naval force. And so they're like, we can't send our ships against them. We'll be sunk in a matter of minutes. So they're like, well, what else can we do? We could try bombing it. Bad idea. Bombing in World War II, as I'm certain we've all heard, was terribly imprecise. That's why they had large formations of 50 plus bombers just carpet bombing entire swaths of land. Because in that day and age, once the bomb is out of the bomber, it's at the mercy of the winds.
right. It's a bit of a crapshoot. Like there are bomb sites, but they can only do so much.
Yeah. And so they're like, we can't do bombers. That's gonna be too many civilian casualties. And so they're like, well, we can't do that. Can't accidentally bomb the French. They're like, huh. And so they're like, you know what? Let's send in let's send in special ops. Let's send in the Royal Marines. And so what they do is there are 12 Marines that get aboard the Royal Navy submarine Tuna. I have
Nice.
to admit, I am very disappointed in the naming of the Royal Navy for that.
You're kidding? That's fantastic. The
You
tuna.
named your submarine Tuna. The Germans don't
Name your
even name
your
their
Pokeball. That sounds great to me.
the HMS Tuna.
Maybe I'm just hungry.
Oh no, but and there's these six Marines on being ferried aboard this submarine, right? Well, what do you think the plan is from here? Give me what you think they're gonna do. Oh, one moment, I've lost your audio.
Sorry,
Oh,
I
there we go.
had it muted. My bad. Um, that's what we get for recording this podcast over a call. But if I were them, I would take the submarine into the harbor. Maybe get up next to one of the big ships or a U-boat bunker, and then have the guys get out and in like frogman gear somehow go plant some explosives. That would be my plan.
Yeah, that's what you think would happen, and that's exactly why they didn't do that, because the German army would expect that as well. What they did is about where is it? Yeah, okay, so about 5 miles from the mouth of the river Gironde, or something like that. Um, they surface, and it's carrying 6 canoes, also called cockles, hence the term cockle shell heroes. Um, and I know on this site we try to be a little bit funny. We try to keep things entertaining.
Right.
So I will do that, but I do have to preface it with I am in no way disparaging or mocking the sacrifice that these men made. Most of these men made the ultimate sacrifice.
Oh, so this was not a mission with a high survival rate then.
No, most of these men did not survive this mission, and I honor their sacrifice. I honor their bravery with the utmost respect. That being said, I have an audience to entertain.
Right. And I mean the image of these like special ops guys canoeing into battle is pretty great. Yeah.
But it starts badly. One of the canoes gets holed by the submarine.
Oh.
By I'm sure by complete accident, maybe it just caught on the periscope or something. But this canoe gets a hole in it before they even start out. And so these 2 Marines have to stay back. The two that so it's 2 Marines to a canoe.
Okay.
And
So these were tiny, like then like these were really like little
yeah,
boats then.
yeah. I mean, I imagine these are like the canoes you would see at like a scout camp or something like that.
Right.
You know, and so those 2 Marines, it I love how it puts it. It says it is said that Marines Fisher and Ellery were left in tears at their disappointment.
Wow.
And
I mean, they had a job to do. I'm sure it was,
mhm. And
very
all the canoes had names. The canoe that got a hole in it was called the Cachalot or Cachalot or
something like that.
Cachalot. I'm
Yeah, Kashala or something.
Cachalot. If it's French, if it's English,
Yeah.
Cachalot.
So this is His Majesty's canoe. Kashala.
Yeah. And so and so that's 2 Marines out of the equation. So already the force of 12 has gone to 10. You know, and so the funny thing is, only 2 people knew the full mission when they set out. Um, the it was two of the Marines, Major Hassler and the commander, Lieutenant McKinnon. Only those two know where they were going. The other 10 Marines were only told once the HMS Tuna surfaced outside of the French coast. So imagine this: you get into a submarine, and you just notice canoes lining the side. Like, what? No clue what mission you're going on. There's just freaking canoes on the submarine you're climbing into.
I imagine they didn't do anything for the submarine's already cramped accommodations either, because they probably had to keep those, you know, in some of the limited open space.
Yeah, something like that. And so I can only imagine the sailors of the submarine just kind of cackling to themselves, like, "Look at these idiots." I don't know. They weren't. They were very brave men, but you know. And so they start paddling, and they get about, and they start to get into the mouth of this river, the River Gironde, and they hit a violent riptide, and that trashes the canoe Conger. The two crew of that canoe, Corporal George Sheard and Marine David Moffat, were towed by other canoes. So they survived the canoe capsizing. Once they get near enough to the shoreline, they're like, okay, you gotta swim to the shore because you're slowing down these other 2 canoes that you're holding on to. And unfortunately, neither man made it to shore.
Oh my
It is
goodness.
assumed that they drowned.
Mm-hmm. I mean, people got to remember, I guess, in picturing this, this isn't a scout camp canoe trip where you're on a nice, calm
No,
pond. Like, this is the Atlantic, this is the North Atlantic Ocean.
the most tempestuous ocean in the world.
This is, yeah, this is really, to take a little camp canoe out into the ocean like that, that's really, really
Hmm.
wild.
And you have to remember that, like, I'm guessing, like, maybe 5 to 10 minutes before these Marines were told to swim to shore, their own canoe had been capsized due to riptides. Those things are deadly in and of themselves. And so this is already going really bad. You haven't even gotten into the river, and you've already lost 4 Marines. 2 were held back, and 2 have now drowned. And so they start. And so the 3 or 4 remaining canoes, um, keep keep going. They keep rowing upstream, and it's a long journey. And so they have to row during the night and hide during the day. And
Oh, so
unfortunately,
this is like this isn't just like a 1 day in out blow it up thing. This is like a multi-day excursion.
no.
This is wow.
Hmm. And so these 4 canoes that they're going through, well, the crew of the canoe Coalfish were caught by the Germans, interrogated, and at the time Hitler had something called the Commando Order, which was a rule that anyone captured on commando raids was to be shot. And so 2 days after their capture, Sergeant Samuel Wallace and Marine Jock Ewart were shot and killed in captivity. And so the other 3 canoes now try to carry on. And there's another tragedy. The crew of the Cuttlefish had to abandon their canoe after it was damaged. And they were also caught by Germans, who this time handed them over to the Gestapo, which was ba-
Yikes.
which was basically the German equivalent of the military police.
Right, the secret police, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the Gestapo were not as bad as the SS, but almost. The Gestapo, it's recorded that they did commit many war crimes, one of which was the execution of unarmed prisoners. Both men, Lieutenant John McKinnon and Marine James Conway, were interrogated and then later shot by the Gestapo. So we're down 4 canoes. So we're now only left with 2.
So
And
this is now 4 guys.
4 people. And they are carrying what are called, um, let me see it. Um, limpet mines. And so these are mines that almost look like if you can imagine an upside down bowl. They look just like that, and you just go stick them onto the side of a ship. Set a timer. Timer goes off. They blow a hole in the ship, and because of the shape of the ship of the mine, a lot of that force is directed into the hole of the ship, thereby making a much larger hole. It was remember this was World War II. They were starting to really experiment with shaped charges, and that's an Olympic mine was a shaped charge, which does a lot more damage. And so these 2 canoers, they they're left to carry on the mission because this is a you do it or you die trying kind of mission. This is a failure is not acceptable. And so they're still paddling at night and hiding during the day. And they know that the Germans now know something is happening because they have found 4 British Marines where they have absolutely no right to be. And so I don't know. Maybe they're just there during the night, like, get out of here, get out of here. Because like if they're caught A canoe doesn't really offer a lot of protection.
Or like escape speed. You can't just like hit the throttle and speed off, right? I mean,
Row harder, row harder. Yeah,
right.
you're not gonna outrun a German destroyer in a canoe unless you're like the Hulk. And so they actually finally make it to the harbor in Bordeaux, and they're actually spotted by a sentry who doesn't raise an alarm. We don't know why. It's not like they write down, "I saw two canoes rowing into port today. Decided not to say anything because they looked really nice."
Right.
No.
Well, it's interesting that they have apparently caught four other British commandos in canoes by this point. You'd think they'd be on the lookout for
Canoes.
suspicious looking canoes near their ships, right? Like this feels like common sense. I don't know.
We've got a new set of orders, sir. Sentry. What are they, sir? You are supposed to look out for enemy canoes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir. What?
Right.
I had the same question. Just it comes from high command, so we can't question it.
Sound the canoe alarm.
the the Kriegsmarine's greatest enemy.
Canoes.
Who knew it wasn't outdated biplanes? It was canoes.
The outdated biplane did some serious damage though too.
Yeah,
We'll talk about that one of these days.
and it's quite possible that the reason the alarm was not sounded was he possibly thought they were just some pieces of driftwood, because the crews were trained to remain motionless in their canoes. And so
God.
they were probably riding the current into the into the harbor or something. And it just looked like, oh, driftwood just floating into the harbor. Nothing to worry about. Except it's not.
Right.
And so they get in there. I don't know how many limpet mines they had per canoe. I'm guessing they probably had like I'm just gonna throw out like 5 limpet mines per canoe.
Okay.
That way, even if they lost some, they could still do a lot of damage. You know, that's military planning. You overkill in your planning. You always make
Right.
sure you overestimate, over prepare, and overstock for any encounter. And so what they do is they place these limpet mines on all of the merchant ships that they could find. I guess this whole process is taking about 2 to 3 hours.
Oh my goodness. And they're just rowing around in this canoe the whole
They're
time.
just rolling around in these canoes in the middle of a strategically important German naval port with all of
Right.
these German sentries doing rounds, checking the
And
merchant ships.
nobody.
Nobody sees them or the mines.
That's unreal.
These mines have 9-hour fuses.
Oh, so they want to like plant these things and then just get out.
Yeah, so this isn't a suicide run. They are planning for survival.
They don't. Yeah.
Mhm.
They don't want to be around when those things go.
No, and so they get in there, and then both the crayfish and the catfish, the two remaining canoes,
That's just awesome.
escaped in the tide. Right?
There you go.
Apparently, the damage was so severe that Winston Churchill said it helped shorten the war by 6 months.
Wow. That was crazy effective. That I did not see that coming.
Like I said, the Kriegsmarine's greatest enemy.
Canoes.
Canoes.
Watch out for canoes, people.
But
That is so nuts.
but this is only half the mission. Now they have to get back to England,
Right.
and the HMS Tuna is not waiting for them. The
Oh
moment
god.
the moment they set off in their canoes, HMS Tuna turned around and hightailed it back into British waters.
Right.
And so the Germans, they're like, huh. Well, a lot of saboteurs often try to flee into Spain because Spain despite being fascist and despite receiving support from Germany during its civil war, had chosen to remain neutral during World War II. And so you make it to Spain, you're home free,
Right.
more or less. And of course,
They're probably not going to turn you over to the Nazis.
you know. However, that's not to say that the Gestapo or the SS doesn't have agents inside of Spain. They most certainly did.
Right.
But basically, if you can make it to Spain, you're home free. And so they're like, since everyone goes that way, they probably went that way too. Attack Bordeaux and just go into Spain. And so they launch this manhunt towards the Spanish border. They're going in completely the wrong direction. They knew the Marines knew this and planned this, and so they go 100 miles north of Bordeaux in a 6-day journey.
Holy cow.
Then they backtrack and go to Gibraltar via Spain.
Which is British territory.
Mm-hmm. Via Spain.
They did all this in a canoe?
Either they were in a canoe or they were on foot on ground.
Oh, they got off and to Spain and then down to
Yeah,
Gibraltar.
I'm pretty sure they abandoned their canoes pretty soon. But Laver and Mills, who I believe were in the Catfish. Yes. No, they were in the Crayfish.
Okay.
Laver and Mills, moving separately from Sparks and Hassler, the two officers who knew the entire operation from the beginning, I think. No. One of them was one of the officers. Major Hassler.
Okay.
Was one of them who knew the plan from the beginning. So they separate because they're like, if we stay together, that's 4 people that they'll find instead of just 2 people. And they did find 2 people. Laver and Mills were found and shot by the Germans.
Oh my goodness.
But with the help of the French resistance, Hassler and Sparks reach Spain and then Gibraltar in a journey that took 15 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
So it is now well into 1943. And even here, Sparks meets some problems. Major Hassler was transported back to Britain very quickly on the orders of Lord Louis Mountbatten. Unfortunately, Sparks could not prove his identity. He did not have his identification papers with him.
Oh no.
And so he is arrested and transported back to London because he's in Gibraltar. It's a British territory. And so they're like, hey, you're dressed in British fatigues of a British Marine with no identification here in a British territory. We're going to send you back to Britain, which is where you want to go anyways. But they transport him back to London.
He goes through all this crap and he gets there and they arrest him?
They arrest him. And so they put him in London under the guard of the military police.
Right.
He escapes.
He escaped?
He escapes
Why?
his own military police.
Why couldn't he just have his family come identify him? I feel like escaping is so much more trouble.
It's hilarious because he escapes, goes and visits his father to assure him, hey, I'm not dead.
And then goes back.
As military people do.
Right.
And then goes back to the Combined Operations headquarters like, hey, so you guys arrested me? You mind undoing that?
Right.
You got me, officer.
Right, Tangled.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And so that is the amazing story of how a couple of canoes sank and did major damage to a German naval port.
That is so wild. Those guys are incredible. That is just absolutely incredible. What a
And
story.
World War II, that's just scratching the tip of the iceberg in crazy stories that can come from World War II in and of itself. Not just any war, every war will have its crazy stories. I mean, we talked about the plan to kidnap King George III's third son in the Revolutionary War.
Right. The future king, King William the Fourth.
Yeah. Um, but I'm just talking about in World War II, just a fun fact. I'm going to throw this out there. British secret operations, I don't know if they were called MI6 at this time or if that was at a later date, but British secret operations hatched the plan. They didn't follow through with it, but they hatched a plan to feed Hitler estrogen so he would turn into a woman.
Wow.
Or at the very least, that it would trigger his motherly instincts into caring for those that he had conquered and thus ending the war.
I don't think these people. I mean, like that was definitely not one of their more successful plans. The Canoes, though, turned out to be astoundingly successful. So good for them.
Yeah, who would have known that outdated technology is the way to defeat the Germans' cutting edge army?
Right.
But well, that's all I have for you tonight.
That is just almost unbelievable. That's so crazy. And you said this is a movie?
Yes, it's a movie. It's called Cockleshell Heroes.
Cockleshell Heroes. So, folks, if you want to know more about this, and I presume it's probably been, you know, dramatized just a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you want to know more, go watch that movie.
Uh huh.
If you want to know more about Teddy Roosevelt and all of his crazy hijinks as president, I recommend the uh, the 3-part story of his life, uh, which was by a historian named, hold on, and I forgot, Edmund Morris. For crying out loud, why can I not remember his name? Historian Edmund Morris has written a wonderful 3-part kind of story of Theodore Roosevelt's life. If you're interested in learning more about him, it's great stuff.
And to everyone listening, whether it is through here on Twitch with our live stream, or whether it's on YouTube as we post these videos, or however else you encounter us, if you have a story you know about that you want to hear us discuss, please reach out to us. Either put it in a comment or find some way to message us, and we'll talk about it. We will.
Find us on Twitter. Our DMs are
Yeah,
open on Twitter. Find it. Find us at
just slide into
uh,
our DMs.
yeah. Slide into our DMs at Twitter and let us know.
And we want to talk about things you want to hear. We want to make history entertaining because it is. History literally has the word story in it. You don't We've all been traumatized by our high school classes of tell us what happened during General Custer's last stand in 1845. I don't know if that's when it was, but
No, it was in the 1880s, but yeah.
1880s. But like, no. What we need to hear about is like just the stuff we're talking about. Things that make history interesting. And even if it's something that's well known, find a way to make it interesting. There's always more to history than just the facts. The facts are just the waypoints for the stories that history is telling us.
Right, and I mean those stories make up the human experience. You know, if you combine all of these stories from history, what you get is humanity. You get us. We are the product of all of these stories.
And history is even being written right now, every day, every moment. History is happening. You are actually
Maybe this podcast is history.
you are literally living history as it happens. Think about it. I mean, like, we were like, oh wow, I want to live through something amazing, and then 2020 happened, and we were just like, not this. I was talking about like a war or something. But you know, so if you want to hear something from us, whether it's as recent as 5 years ago, or as ancient as 21 AD, or even 300 BC, if you can find something, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We love topic suggestions.
Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support, and please come join us next time. So, from both of us here at Stories to Tell, from Jonathan and from me, again, I'm Logan. Thank you again for joining us, and come see us next time when we have another story to tell.